of the Finance Select Board and School Committee to order. It is 6:03 p.m.
I'll call the Finance Committee to order. Thank you.
And I call the school committee meeting to order.
All righty. So Adam, do you want to jump right in?
Sure. I would love to.
I'll put you on the hot seat.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for kind of rearranging your schedule so we could all meet and go over this. I did send a preliminary budget out to Chris and John on Friday afternoon of last week for you guys to review prior to tonight's meeting. I'm not sure how you guys want to do this. If you want to ask questions or you want us to go through it, I'm not sure how how you guys would like to approach going through this.
Personally, I would like you to give us the grand tour, and then we'll take it from there. Okay,
should I share my screen or no? I don't want to do anything that's going to kind of screw this up. So I can certainly share my screen.
You'll just share your screen. Chris, did you give him permissions? You should be good to go now, Adam.
Awesome. Okay, hold on one second. Let me just get something else up on my end. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, can you make it a little bit bigger?
Sure, yeah, I know it's big on my end, but
I'm blind.
Yep, that's okay. Just let me know. Bigger?
That's good for me. How about everybody else?
It's fine.
Okay, so again, I sent this out to Chris and John on Friday afternoon, so they could take a look at it and disseminate it as they as they wanted to. This is our the summary page for FY22. I'll go over this budget summary section here, and then we can go through some questions or discussion.
Let me interrupt just a second. Not about the presentation, but on your screen at the top, there's a little box that says view everyone. If you press on that, one of the options that comes up is to hide everyone. And if you hide everyone, then the whatever's on the screen, for example, the budget summary that Adam has put up, will fill the screen instead of taking just the bottom portion of it. So if that helps anybody trying to see, you can do that and eliminate. We'll look at the people and just look at what Adam has on his computer screen.
Thank you for that, John. So again, we'll go over this budget summary and then we can discuss or answer questions. Obviously pretty self-explanatory. We have our preliminary Chapter 70 revenue. That's from the first iteration of the governor's budget that he released back in January. The next line, our required local contribution. Again, that's a formula from the state level. Those two amounts together would give us our minimum net school spending requirement for FY22. The next line, the additional town allocation. Now this is that original 305 797 that was passed years ago. And based on some preliminary information from the town, it was going to be reduced another $100,000 this year down to $105,797. The next line, our transportation article. So that cost is a constant cost for 3 years. So we negotiate a 3-year contract. The cost stays the same for the life of that contract. In FY22, July 1, 2021 will be the second year of that 3-year contract. So that amount stays the same. So that includes athletic transportation, special education transportation, and regular education transportation is in that number. All 4 of these together give us this $10.7 million that, we like to call the total state local revenue, just essentially the money that we will get. That next line is the in-kind contribution that I just received from Chris last week. Thank you for that, Chris. The in-kind contribution this year, $2.5 million. That's gone up compared to last year. Again, rising health insurance costs is the major factor in that. And when we net those two numbers out, so when we net the 10.7 million and take away the in-kind contribution of the 2.5, we're left with what I call, or what we call at the school, the town allocation to the school. And that's what I like to say is the check or the cash, the actual cash that the town is going to give to the school for the fiscal year. And we can all see that's 8.1, almost $8.2 million. The school operating budget. So what it costs the school to operate for the fiscal year 2022 would be $10.6 million. So that leaves us about a $2.5 million gap from our operating budget to revenue that we would get from the town. Projected revenue offsets. Now these are these are high level projections. And the major revenue offsets that we have are school choice, circuit breaker, and then our grants, Title I, Title IIA, Title IV. Certainly this current fiscal year and for FY22, we'll have ESSER and CARES money that we can use to offset, but those are the real the revenue offsets that we rely on. So that right now, based on information that we have, we're projecting about $1.5 million or so for those offsets. The next line, this is new for this year. Obviously, like I just mentioned, we're going to get some ESSER CARES money. Right now, the only money that we are aware of that we have allocated is the ESSER 2 money, which the school district was allocated $292,000 for fiscal year 22. So right now we allocated, as you can see, $162,000 of that 292 to costs for FY22. Now that amount, the $292,000 that we get in FY22, we can spend it or have the ability to spend through September of 2023. So we have a couple of years to spend that money. And then the last line obviously gets us back to the total school operating budget. We're trying to get our budget into the number that the town, the actual amount that the town gives us. So with all that being said, our projected deficit as it stands right now for this year, based on all of the information that we have currently, is $727,000. So, questions, discussions. I'm not sure how you guys want to move forward from here.
One question I had was over on the offsets. You've got a column on revenue offsets, and on the cherry sheet, the amount for school choice receiving tuition is $658,927, and I don't see that amount showing up anyplace in that column.
So that amount would be in the revenue, the regular revenue offset. So in each of these tabs
Right.
down at the bottom, you would see in the East Meadow tab, I can go to it. So right here, we have teachers over here in this left-hand column. I'll make this a little bigger, Jen, for you. We have teachers over here in this left-hand column, and on the offset column, here's where their salary would be offset with either grant funds or with school choice funds.
Do you have a way to separate? Do you have a way to separate out the school choice funds?
I can, yeah, I can. You'd like it separate in this summary right here?
Yes, I think so, because it comes as a lump sum, not necessarily dependent on any particular use.
Correct. So I can certainly add a column that would show each specific offset for each department or school.
That'd be good. Thank you.
And I will say, so right now we're projecting, I know what the cherry sheet says, but based on the amount of seats that that the school committee approved to open up, I'm basing my revenue projection on 666,000. So it's not too far off the cherry sheet, and that amount obviously could change, based on a number of factors. But right now, I'm basing that on $666,000.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And I can also send all of this backup information to everybody as well.
I had a question for you. In East Meadow, and it was part of the offsets. It offsets a permanent sub. Is the school keeping the permanent subs?
So, for really not knowing what school reopening is going to look like in the fall, we currently have 2 permanent subs in each of the schools, along with 2 permanent sub nurses or part-time nurses in the school. The plan right now, just not knowing what the fall will bring for reopening and COVID cases and all that, we plan on keeping 1 permanent sub in each of the buildings and 1 permanent nurse sub on staff to help with whatever potential problems we may have opening in the fall. So that's where you'll see. So for East Meadow, this 35,000 is for 1 of those permanent subs. The high school, 1 of those permanent subs, and then for health and nursing, the 30,000 is for 1 of those permanent nurse subs.
Okay.
Okay, Joe Farnia, Finance Committee. Going back to choice, how many students are we allocating this year? How much do we get per pupil? Are we, given that COVID is around, are we trying to maximize out the number of seats or leave a little, playroom, because we got to maintain at least that 3-foot distance? So I'm looking at the choice numbers and trying to understand how many students we're bringing in and what % of our student population that represents also.
So for the actual amount, I don't have that right now. Jen Bartos or someone from school committee, I don't know if you guys know how many you voted on, but what I can say is that we receive $5,000 each for each school choice student that we take in. And then there's also something called a SPED increment. So if those students need special education services, we get the $5,000 plus an amount over that $5,000. It averages out. Not everyone obviously receives special education services, but it averages out to about $6,000 per school choice student that we get. So $6,000 of revenue per school choice student that we get if we add in the SPED increment to that.
And what is our average per pupil spending currently?
State just came out with that. So if you give me 1 second, I can get that for you.
Okay.
Jen, while I'm getting this, or someone from school committee, do you guys have that? I don't recall off the top of my head how many school choice students you guys voted on to accept for this year.
Phil and I are both looking for it right now. I thought it was itemized out in our minutes, and it's not. So I'm looking for my notes, and Carol is as well. So we'll get that to you shortly.
Okay. So to catch me up then while we're waiting, Adam or someone, Jennifer, so what is our focus in terms of technology today?
So just one second, because that number popped up. So
Okay.
our based on FY20, our per pupil expenditures is $13,433.
Okay.
Okay.
And our choice money pays us less than half of what our spending is. Didn't
Is that
in the
correct?
beginning,
Essentially.
wasn't it like an 80? I mean, it's been a long time since I was on the finance committee, but I always thought that we were getting 80% of either the town that the student came from's per pupil spending, or, you know, and here we're getting less than half of what our per pupil spending is. And to me, you know, it means we got to raise taxes to bring in other towns' kids. You know, I mean, to me, that's a challenge. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, so the school choice, it's, like I said, it's a flat rate of 5,000, and then when we add that sped increment in there, it averages out to about 6,000. So yes, you are right. It's less than half of what it costs us to educate a student.
So now I have a question. Why are we bringing in school choice students if we're not breaking even with them?
I feel like something is off with that math, because when we were doing it, it's supposed to help us cover costs. So I'm missing something. So we'll check on that. But I do have the total number of seats. Do you want? I can give you it as a total, or I can give it to you as a breakdown if you'd like.
Broken.
Give me a breakdown. I'd like the breakdown just so I can have it once.
Okay. Kindergarten, it's 10 seats. Grade 1, 4 seats. Grade 2, 3 seats. Grade 3, 0 seats. Grade 4, 6 seats. Grade 5, 0 seats. Grade 6, 2 seats. Grade 7, 11 seats. Grade 8, 6 seats. Grade 9, 6 seats. Grade 10, 7 seats. And 11 and 12 are both 0 seats.
Okay.
Jen, is that our total number of school choice students, or just what you guys are allowing to come in now?
That's what we, as I understand it from what I'm texting with Carol back and forth, this is, as I remember, this is what we were opening up to accept. This is not what we have currently in the district.
What do we currently have? More or less?
Yeah. I believe it's less than this, but this number is to try to recoup ones that we have lost for the past.
Okay, I'm not sure if people can hear. Can you hear me? This is
We can.
Yes.
My video isn't working. It's for some reason it shows the other half of the room instead of my face. So we currently have 109 school choice students, and what Jen just read off to you, which is 68 additional open seats. We are in the process right now of confirming the 109 to make sure that they are continuing with us. And the additional seats are based on our current enrollment in the schools.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, the numbers that were given by grade level are for incremental new seats to be made available. Is that correct?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, so you have 109 already, and, okay,
That 109 current enrollment includes 8 12th graders that will graduate.
this year,
Graduate this year, correct.
okay.
Jennifer, the figures that you gave, I don't think add up to 68.
No,
Add up to 55 or something.
I'm going to
Yep.
speak up for that one. So what's missing is there was also the potential of there being 13 fifth graders. If there were 13 fifth graders, that would be dependent on whether or not we opened a third fifth grade or not. And that's how you get your 68.
So you're thinking about adding another classroom just to bring in 13 students?
No, that was not what was approved.
Please say again then what you just described.
I said, no, that is not what was approved. It was proposed in 2 separate ways. That's why Jennifer did not include those 13, because that's not how it was approved. But that's why the numbers are off.
Okay, so which number? So the 68 then is not what you're thinking about bringing in additional.
Right, my mistake, I misspoke. It's a total of 50, we've approved the 55 seats in the way that I broke it out.
Okay, thank you. So that's a total of 100, and if the 55 are brought in, that'd be 164. Now what's the expect for the total enrollment for the coming year?
Minus the ones that are graduating this year, which is 12.
No, the total enrollment for the schools. $700 students, 800 students.
We have 716 if all return.
And that does not then include the 55 that you want to add in.
Correct.
But that includes the 109. Okay.
Yes.
And how many students do we have at Pathfinder?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know if I, hold on.
So this is Rich. Sorry, that can't be on video tonight, but just looking at the 164 minus the 12 graduating, or am I right at 152 students?
Is your question 152 school choice students? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, 152 school choice students.
Keeping in mind that the first numbers that Jennifer gave you are proposed. It doesn't mean those seats are filled currently.
Correct.
Correct. And we're reimbursed approximately $6,000 a student, or $912,000 is my understanding, if they were all getting sped, which they probably aren't, but so it's between 5 and 6, but just using 6 as the number for the sake of math. But it costs us which is $912,000 in reimbursement, but it costs us $1.98 million at 13,000 students. So isn't that $1 million loss? Or am I thinking about it wrong?
At least for me, there's a lot of background noise, so I could only hear some of what was just said.
Yeah, so let me repeat that. I'm sorry. So when I look at 152 students, the proposed plus the existing students minus the graduating 12, I land at 152. When I take that 152 at $6,000 a pupil in total reimbursement, and again, I'm assuming, you know, the 6,000 because we don't know the split between sped and non-sped. So that's $912,000 in reimbursement. If I, you know, then say it costs us $13,000 per pupil for educational expenses, that's $1.98 million. So what I'm trying to back into is the acceptance of the 152 total students of school choice actually $1 million loss for us as a town?
Well, I mean, this is Carol Hepworth. What I'm also is these numbers are the numbers coming in. We also, Adam, I don't know if you have that in front of you, we also have a number of students going out. So there's that figure too that we have to consider.
And how many students are going out?
So based on the cherry sheet, I'm going to bring it up right now. Based on the cherry sheet, where Chris is where I believe you take that cost and put it on our in-kind. Based on the cherry sheet, we are sending $346,000 worth. We're paying other districts $346,000. So essentially, the $666,000 that we're projecting to receive for school choice in is offset by that 346 that the cherry sheet is projecting that we're going to send out. So really, there's a net of $320,000 to the town or to the district.
And
What about,
are we paying them $5,000 or $6,000 a student sent?
Yeah. So again, the school choice rate is $5,000. At least for us, at least for the students that we take in for school choice, the average is about $6,000. I'm not sure what the sped increment looks like for students that are choicing out. So I can't say that the average is $6,000. But the average revenue for us for a school choice student, when you add in their sped increment, is about $6,000. I can't say what it would be for the kids we're sending out. But what I can say is that based on our projection, $666,000 that we're receiving in and what we're charged or assessed on the cherry sheet of 346, it's a net gain of about 320,000.
how does the $362,000 for charter school sending tuition figure into this?
That's also a cherry sheet assessment as well. So these are all these costs are all included in the in-kind calculation that Chris provides to us, which is then, you know, it's this total number here.
That's the cost for students to attend charter schools elsewhere?
Correct.
So let's see, that on the cherry sheet, that total is $708,431. So that's what it costs us to send children out of Granby. Is that correct?
Does that total include both school choice and charter? Because currently we have 60 school choice and 22 charter.
The school choice is 346,000 and the charter is 362,000.
Wow.
That's 708 going out, and what is it coming in? 666,000 coming in, 660,000 coming in, the approximate figure. There's a little more going out. There's a little over $100,000 more going out and coming in.
Well, I got to tell you, I want to be a charter school because I'm getting paid what, 13,000? I'm getting paid what our average student assessment is, it looks like. You know, close to it, you know, 12 or 13,000 per pupil because we're only sending out 22 kids.
Yeah, so based on the preliminary FY22 cherry sheet, we are charged, or we're assessed school choice sending tuition of $346,000 and charter school sending tuition of $362,000, which adds up to just over $708,000.
Okay, but here's my question. If we're sending out 22 kids, are we paying out that 362, or is that an assessment and we're actually paying some rate that's less than that per pupil? Because what I've done is I've divided 362 by 22 students, you know, and I'm saying, wow, you know, we're paying $12,000 a student unless all that money's not being spent. I don't know.
Well, I know at least for charter schools, obviously the tuition, you know, varies depending on, you know, what charter school you attend. So I'm not sure, Carol, or if you have it in front of you, what charter school our kids are going to, but I don't know the exact cost of tuition for the kids that we're sending to charter schools, you know, how that makes up that money.
Currently, we have one student going to the Hamden Charter School of Science. We have 11 students going to the Pioneer Valley Chinese Immersion School. We have 9 going to Pioneer Valley Performing Arts, and we have 1 going to Holyoke Community Charter.
Okay. And the Northampton one is probably the most expensive right now. I'm guessing, I don't know. Anyway, okay. I'm just saying, I'm looking at this and you go into school choice and the public school system brings in students elsewhere and we get $5 or $6 grand, and gee, but a charter school siphons off somebody, they get 12 grand. I mean, that's certainly not fair to the public school system and makes you wonder why we're even doing choice, given that, as I think it was Rich said earlier, no matter how you play with these numbers, we got $1 million deficit to make up based on the number of students that we're bringing in. Unless you can show me that there's some magical efficiency over here that says, oh yeah, but if we had all these students, you know, that was always the assumption, our cost per student actually go down so we can teach more students with, you know, I don't know, because you know, every time I go to a town meeting, the school system always needs more money. So I'm just looking at this and saying, financially, if we're going to have this great school system and the benefit of small classes and stuff, you know, we need more money from choice. Or we need to set up our own charter school for choice students and generate $12,000 a student.
So I'm just going to say real quick, this will be my 3rd year presenting the budget. The last 2 years that I've done the budget working with obviously the schools in the town, the schools haven't asked for any additional money. We've actually been able to make it work with the allocation that the town gives us, and then using essentially all of our revenue offsets to reconcile any deficit. So as long as I've been here, and that's 2 years, we haven't gone to the town for any additional money to balance our budget. So I just want to make that very clear.
Okay, I get that. I think I'm just saying, if you really look forward, because budgets are always a challenge and we may get a short boost from all of the COVID financial money that's supposed to be coming to the towns. My bigger question is, can we afford to educate some other town student for $6,000 a pupil? That's all. Anyway.
So can I just jump in for a second, Audrey Shudak? Sorry. School choice for kids choicing out is not an option. So we can't say that we don't want our kids to choice out. That's not a choice for us. We can choose how many we choose to choice in. I am curious too why it looks like these numbers are so askew as far as the ones that we're accepting in, if they cost more to educate versus what we're getting for them. But our kids choicing out is not an option if families want them to choice out.
My understanding, though, school choice is an opt-in program in the state. Not all towns participate. Is that still true?
You cannot participate for taking kids in, but kids are allowed to choice out. That doesn't change.
So it's Jen Millette. Can I say something? The school choice does help offset the cost, because even if we didn't take those students in, we would still have that expense. So if the expense is 10 million and we take in 5 students to help offset those costs, it doesn't cost any more to educate those students, in the sense that we're not hiring anybody extra just to educate them. They will help to reduce the cost of the expenses. If we choose to take none in, we still have the same cost, but we don't have that revenue to offset it. That's where the school choice, it does matter, because it does offset some of those costs. Without having them, we still pay 10 million.
Yeah,
It's
but
just,
Isn't
yes,
the balance,
less.
isn't the balance, though, of what you take in versus what you put out, you'd want to balance that so that your intake is equal to your output? In this case, you know, when we talk about 60 students school choicing out of Granby, but proposing to take 152 in, that's what creates the negative circumstance that we have in terms of the value. If it was 60 versus 60, you wouldn't have then it would be exactly what you said. But we can't really leverage expenses across, you know, all of our teachers and facilities unless we hit some kind of critical mass at some great number of school choice students in. Then you would leverage your expense and your cost per pupil down. But to me, it seems like you should only be balancing the 60 versus the 60 in order to just have an equal offset, not have an expense.
So we used to
we don't-
send
we-
less out.
We don't have an expense. We have sending 100 or accepting 162 or 55 or 52, whatever that number is, and sending out 60, we're netting $300,000 of school choice funds. Now, there's so many factors that go into the per pupil cost that the state gives us at 12,000. But if we're looking at school choice in and school choice out, we're netting over $320,000 in that process. So I'm kind of
Help me with the
confused
math
at
on
that.
Help me with the math on that, because we have 152 students that we receive in at 6,000 and pay out again 60 at 6,000. Just again using 6,000 as the number. How is that a net benefit to us?
Adam, can I just jump in? This is Jill Pelletier, and it's not necessarily going to answer your question about the math, because I think it speaks more to just the structure and why those numbers are so different when the breakdown comes grade level to grade level, because it's based on space, enrollment, and where it makes sense to look at class numbers, right? So when we're talking about where it won't impact students and where it won't add an increased budgetary impact to the school, that's where you see those school choice numbers go up. Where we're talking about 0 is where it would impact the budget and where it would impact the school, because it wouldn't make sense to add school choice numbers in, and that's where you see those numbers as 0. So I think it's an intricate process, and it's done with a lot of collaboration between school administration, the school committee itself, and a lot of talking back and forth. And I get this in the sense that the math doesn't make sense when you're talking about what money you're taking in versus what you're losing when students choice out. But in the same breath,
if you have space and you're already educating Granby students, and you can at least recoup some budgetary cost money that can be used to fund the school, and there is that availability, then why would you not go ahead and do that? And I think that's where we've had this conversation over numerous meetings, even in the short time I've been on the school committee, to try to look at that option.
Yeah, I guess the only answer to why you wouldn't do it would be as if it cost you more than you take in. So I know it sounds like a very intricate process, and I understand, you know, costs associated with each grade level. I'm just curious at what all the math looks like in terms of in and out. Because I mean, end of the day, that's what we need to know is having 152 school choice students with the proposed count, of course, I'm using. Is that a smart financial decision for us as a town? Does it create a net benefit or a net loss?
But I'm just going to
add, Jill, to your point, like the overwhelming sentiment from parents in the school district is they want to have low class sizes. They want 19, 20, 21, 22 kids in a class, especially at the elementary level. And a way for us to do that is to accept school choice students and possibly open up an additional classroom instead of having 26, 27, 28 kids in a classroom if we didn't accept school choice students. So there, you know, it's certainly not just a financial decision as to why we're doing it. You know, there's some educational, instructional, you know, decisions that play into that as well.
And also, I just want to add that it's very rare that we fill every school choice seat that we offer up. You know, we're putting out there 152, and you know, it's not. I don't think it's that highly probable that we'll fill all 152.
Okay, I would just like to finish up on this by saying that I agree with Rich. I mean, I find it hard to believe that of all the money and all the students that we service and bring in under choice, somehow magically there's no incremental, there's no variable cost to that. Because, for example, if we had less students, we would have fewer teachers, we would have smaller labor, we would have smaller health insurance. I'm not advocating for that, but I'm basically saying, looking at this, we've taken choice forever on faith because we needed money. And the alternative was raising taxes to a level that people were not going to stand. Now, before you get to that, just one last point. Are you still moving the sixth graders to the senior high school building to make more room because of the space issues that appear to be at the East Meadow School?
Okay, two things. First, we voted against having moving the sixth graders to the high school. There might be further discussion, but at this point, that is not in the plan. And shoot, now I lost what I was going to say. And it's gone.
Okay.
No, I remember. So as far as class size, accepting students to the class, students in, we're not accepting students where it's going to have an impact where we're going to have less teachers. We're not hiring teachers to fill our our school choice roles. They're balancing out a class that keeps us within the parameters that we've set as a community and as a school committee. So we might have three students that will take in the fifth grade, for example, and that balances out the two class sizes, and they don't go above. So we have 21 and 21 in the class, as opposed to, you know, 18 and however the math works. It just rounds out the class size. Go ahead, Audrey.
Well, I was going to say, would it help to share the document too? So basically, once you take our number in any particular grade, I actually have the sheet pulled up here. So say there's going to be, make sure I'm on the right page here. per the grade, there's going to be fourth grade, for example. That's our perfect example, or fifth, excuse me. There are a total of 44 students in that grade. So you divide that into 2 classes, you have 22 kids. That is why we've chosen not to have any school choice added into that grade. When you start looking at another grade, let me see here. For example, second grade, where there's 51 students. Now, classroom sizes should be no greater in elementary school than 25 students, but now you have 51, so you have a 25 and a 26. And at any point in the year, someone else could move in and try to join that grade. So what you try to do is you take in some school choice kids to then offset that to make the classes a more manageable size and within what they're supposed to be and within what we've agreed for them to be to make it work. So that's where you're constantly juggling and looking at that for the betterment of our students in Granby.
What was the count of additions to the grade? I'm sorry, I missed the grade with 51.
So the grade with 51 is grade 2.
Okay, and how many school choice students did we say we were going to take in there?
And actually, I'm going to correct that one. Let me see, resident, and I was just grabbing them really quick. So I'm trying to look at the sheet. So grade 1 has 44 resident students.
Okay.
44 resident, 4 non-resident, for a total of 48 students.
Okay.
Am I reading this right? So, right.
Audrey,
Total of 48 students. Go ahead, Carol.
Audrey, let me jump in.
Make sure I'm reading the document right.
Right. So because of COVID, we had many Granby residents decide to homeschool their students. So when choosing how many seats we were opening up for school choice, we had to keep in mind that those homeschool parents may decide to send their students back. So currently we have in first grade, as she was saying, 44 residents. We have 4 non-residents for a total of 48. But we also have 8 students, resident students, that have homeschooled this year, which would bring the total to 56. So we're only proposing 4 school choice seats because that would bring the total to 60, which would be 20 in a classroom. We do not want to put us in a situation where we make it so that adding too many school choice seats would make it make it not available for our residents. So if all of those 8 residents that chose to homeschool because they did not want to send their students to school return, we would have 56 in first grade. So we're only adding 4 seats. So when we made our decisions, we had a lot of information that we had to consider because this year we had, I believe, 29 additional homeschool students that were Granby residents. So we want to make sure that we're not filling seats with non-residents, resulting in too many residents and making the numbers go over 60.
Oh, so that's helpful. So we have a hard number then on a per class size of 25. Is that what I'm hearing?
In kindergarten, first and second grade, our hard numbers, we try to keep it at 20. Third and fourth grade, I believe it's 22 to 23. 4, 5, and 6, I believe it's 25.
What are the
And so that's our,
for those?
that makes sense then on the hard stop number, because what you're trying to do is manage the 3 classes that you were talking about, instead of having a total of 56 students, the 48 plus the 8 that were homeschooled that may or may not come back, you'd end up with 56 or 2 classes of 28, which is above our level of 25 by 3. So that's why you're positioning to maximize the use of the classroom to take those in. Is that what I'm understanding?
You got it exactly.
Okay. So that would just lead me to the question, though, going back to the beginning of balance between the outs and the ins. So I understand it's a number of students that are proposed to accept, but those proposed students feed the budget totals, correct?
Yeah, so the projection, I think, is what you're asking. The projection that I'm using for school choice to offset is based on the proposed number of seats that we have open.
Okay. So again, that's the balance between the out, what we pay for students to go out, and what we would take students in. And again, I'm just going back to that piece. I understand the balancing of the classrooms and the hard numbers based on grade, completely understand that. But what I'm trying to get back to and understand is if we're proposing in the budget a total of potentially 152 students we would receive, and we're saying that we currently have 60 going out, we still have a deficit. So to me, it would seem like, again, going back to just the simple math, is that we should have 60, we should take 60 in, and we got 60 out, and then we don't have a deficit associated with school choice.
So I'm going to jump in for a second too. And I don't know where I missed that because I was traveling, as I had said earlier. Where is it that we're seeing that there's a deficit due to student school choice? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure, Audrey. That is the expense associated by students. So what we're saying is it costs us approximately $13,000 per student to educate, and we receive $6,000 and we're just assuming it's 6 because it's between 5 and 6, depending whether or not they need sped. So the delta being $7,000 per student is the expense associated with school choice. So if all things are created equal and we put 60 students out and spend $6,000 a student, we would want to take in no more than 60 students in, so that we have a balance to the cost associated with it. I get the leverage piece with the classroom sizes, but again, we're not a business in the sense that we're getting more revenue because we're able to put more through.
I'm also curious though how those numbers actually work though, because it isn't necessarily a flat rate when we're talking about our special ed kids going out. Like it's not an exchange of 1 for a 1. As I understand.
Yeah, that's what Adam explained, that the benefit or the what we receive is between $5,000 and $6,000 per student, depending upon whether or not they receive special ed or not. So just for the sake of doing the math, we're just using the 6,000. So the minimum, Adam, and correct me if I'm wrong, is $5,000 per student received. The maximum is 6,000 if they're special ed. Is that correct?
No, so the 6,000 is an average. So one of those choice students could cost us, not cost us, we could get $20,000 for them. So we could get 5,000 plus another 10 or $15,000, depending on what those special education services add up to be. The 6,000 is just an average cost based on all of the choice in students. So if you're we just received the 5,000, or we might receive 15. The average for all of our students for the projection is about $6,000.
Okay, like that works out with our outbound too. If you look at the $346,000 it cost us at 60 students, it's a little less than $6,000 a student, about $5,400 a student. So then I think the 6,000 is a good average when you use that to calculate, the costs associated with the 152 in versus the 60 out.
I guess if I could sort of simplify what I'm hearing, and that is that at my own level, if our average per pupil spending according to the number is $13,433, and let's assume for sake of argument that every student is $6,000, there's a $7,400 difference. And what the board, I hear from members saying is that, well, hey, you know, we got these extra students and everything else that we bring in this money, and there's no added cost associated at all with bringing in those other students.
So let me
just finish.
Yep,
and
sorry.
So basically, the question becomes, what is true? I'm not saying choice is a bad thing. What I am saying is that when Rich brings it up and we look at this number of $1 million, well, that's a big number, because that's 10% of the total budget almost of the 10.6 million. And so the question becomes, you know, what's the real cost then? And what is the optimal level for the number of students? So anyway.
And I apologize for interrupting you. So let me just add this in here. So when we are funded in our Chapter 70 formula, we are funded at the foundation per pupil rate that we are funded on, taking our enrollment, is $12,084. Okay. And I tried to get this in there before we started this whole conversation. So when we get funded Chapter 70, based on our enrollment at a snapshot in time, we are funded at $12,084. Now, included in that number are students of ours. There are students that are going to choice out, right? They're going to choice out to another district, and that student might only cost us the $5,000, but in our foundation, we've received the $12,000 for that student. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to me, it makes perfect sense, but then, so you're getting 12, you're spending 5, so you have a net of 7. But again, that goes back to the balance of the in and out, that you wouldn't want to take in more than you put out.
And I think as a general rule, this is what we've put out as a proposed number of seats. And I would say that probably, and I don't have the numbers to back me up, back my statement up, but I feel like we're probably closer in balance with, at the end of the year, what we actually accept for total number of students in and what actually go out. It's much closer. Like, we're proposing 152 seats. I don't think we're going to get 152 seats. We've got 60 students going out. We may not have that many going out because we had a higher number of students choicing out because they wanted to get into districts that were full in person sooner this year. So the numbers are all kind of wonky this year also.
No, I can understand that, but you have a known and an unknown, right? So you have a 60, which is a known, and whether all 60 go or not go, but that's a known. The unknown is what will come in. And currently, you know, we have a smaller base than that currently. So that's a known as well. So when you're building the budget, if you're using, you know, a total of 152, and we go back to the budget screen, and then we have a budget deficit of 752,000, I was thinking, I think I saw the difference is easily covered in the budgeting based on the school choice in being less. If you budgeted less students in, that deficit would be smaller. Am I wrong?
Yeah, so I'm in our budget, I might have misspoke, so I apologize if I did. I'm not budgeting. Our projection isn't based on 152 kids. Our projection is based on only if we replace the outgoing seniors. So the projection that I'm using in the budget is 111 students, and all that would do would fill the seats of our outgoing seniors.
Okay.
And that's how we've done it. That's how we've done it in the few years that I've been here is the minimum of that revenue, and obviously anything on top of that obviously is, you know, would help out. But I don't have 152 kids built into the budget, because the we wouldn't get 152 kids. The reality of it is us filling all 152 seats is low.
Okay,
So-
so I'm, oh, sorry. Is it okay?
Go ahead, Audrey.
Okay, thank you. So basically, and again, I'm sorry that I missed a full part of the beginning. At some point, my volume kicked out. Our biggest question here is at the end of the day, on our sheets, school choice is bringing us revenue, correct? On the sheets. So our question here is whether or not it is also costing us for more staff and more health insurance. Is that what we're trying to wrap around to in the discussion here of whether or not it's actually a gain or it's a loss, correct?
Yes, I think so. Yep.
Yeah, but the question is past, the question's more than just the, the SG&A associated with the school, teachers and facilities, et cetera. It goes to the inbound and outbound balance and the cost per pupil. So yes, you're right, but it's a little bit more involved than just that.
Well, and I guess the part that's really hard for me too is that I feel like what I want to say and bring it up here too is that school choice wasn't designed to pay for your budget at all. It was meant to go towards your extras, your sports, your improvement on your building. So the fact that in general we use it as part of our operating budget is completely backwards in general.
No, it's not. Because
Absolutely it is.
It absolutely is not, because we have $708,000 going out for school choice and for tuition and for a school charter. So that's real money. It's gone.
And why are our kids leaving?
That's the choice that was not to have.
They're going out because they're not getting the programs they need here. And that's really the bottom line. And, we don't want it to be a contentious discussion or anything, but the reason people are choicing out and going to charter schools and going to these other schools is because we don't offer those programs that they're looking for. And the reason they don't do that is because we're not funded at a higher rate as some of the surrounding communities that they're going to. And we've all been here sitting through multiple discussions and listening to budget problems. We don't have the money that some of these other area towns have. So we're being forced to pay our tuition to other area schools. And we're always going to have that money going out until we can attract people to want to stay. We're not really getting kids at the high school level that want to come. If they come in at an early level and they make great friendships, they might stay. But we're not attracting kids to come in the 7th grade, 8th grade high school area and come and stay and come to the school because we don't offer the programs. We don't offer multiple languages. We don't offer civics classes. We don't offer any extras. We're bare minimum. So when it comes down to it, people are constantly going to choice out. We're constantly going to be spending that money to send our kids to other schools because we're at the bottom. We're one of the lowest funded schools in the state. And that's just the bottom line of it. We can slice and dice numbers constantly, but the reality of the situation is we are paying a lot of money for people to go out, and that's a big chunk of our money because we don't have the attraction factor for people to come to town.
That's not
what. Yeah, but Jen, with all due respect, we have more choicing in than out. So there has to be some value to what we see today in the Granby schools. I know I went to Granby schools in the 80s, 70s and 80s, and it's not what it was then, and we went through different times then too where we were funded more or less depending on what.
I'm a Granby girl too, Rich, and when I was in school, we had multiple languages. We had multiple things. We don't anymore. We have one language. Absolutely
but again, to your point, your point of students choicing out, the net effect is we have more choicing in. So again, we have to be offering something that people find attractive.
School choice is a bit of a red herring here. The reason we don't do these other things is because we are a small town. We have no way to compete with big towns. We have no way to compete with their multiple bases of income, including non-residential housing income. We have no way to compete with the fact that our housing values are relatively low compared to the rest of the state, and yet our tax rate is skyrocketing high. These aren't things, there's no way to make this work out financially with the assumptions that you made about the schools. The assumptions that you want to make about schools is that As a small town, we have to offer the same offerings that you get in large towns. That doesn't make sense economically. The assumption that our class sizes have to be of a certain size doesn't make sense when you're a small town. The assumption, for example, when was the last time anybody asked the question, why are we still supporting a high school? What business do we have supporting a high school at a town our size? No business.
So John, so that's an interesting question. If you're going to bring that up, then I guess I asked, when's the last time you've been in the high school to see exactly what's going on there and the instruction and the things that are going on in the high school? You can't ask a question, why are we supporting a high school, and not know what is going on in that high school?
The reason I can is because we're a town of 6,000 people and our tax rate is way up compared to the rest of the
towns that are smaller than us that have better schools and bigger choices.
So I do have so if the suggestion is we do get rid of the high school, you're going to have a lot of people leave. A lot of people
be paying a whole heck of a lot
they
more.
will move, and then there is no tax revenue.
Well, wait a minute. Have you looked at the housing market recently? Housing prices are selling everywhere. We're about 10% above asking prices. It's silly to say that people aren't going to move into town.
They're not families. We don't have a high school.
Families.
I would be moving, absolutely. I would not be staying with my kids here.
We're going to be spending a lot more for, if we close a high school, you think 708,000 is a lot to school choice out? When you're paying to school choice out an entire school of 423 students at the high school, that's a lot more than 708,000.
Have you heard of regional high schools?
Yeah, have you heard that we've never had anyone want to regionalize with us?
And it's been explored.
And the cost is more. You don't save any money on regionalizing.
Okay, I'd like to bring this back and say, look, what we're really looking at is education. We're a small town. We cannot afford all the teachers and the salaries and the programs, but we can be smart, okay? If we have to have a limited curriculum, we could make that the best limited curriculum. I mean, when you think about it, when you learn math, well, then you can learn music and art because they're all spatial and dimensional and stuff like that. And if you've got language, I mean, more and more kids are going to a Chinese immersion school. You know, they've done well. And there are certain kinds of courses where basically you can deal with technology, you know. So when it comes to foreign language, you can utilize technology as a way to push that. Although in today's marketplace, that may not be the best example because there's a lot of technology out there. I'm not saying close down the high school, but yes, when we look at all of these challenges and how do we compete, and John is right, we can't compete against the big towns. Are we willing to sit here and put everything on the table? Because on the one hand, you're saying, oh, well, we got to have faith in choice money and we need the money and it doesn't cost us anything more. And over here, and gee, the only reason that we're losing students are because we can't offer those programs. Well, yes, because they would be expensive. You know, it was just like if we were going to build that new high school at, I don't know, 100 million, or I don't remember what the number was. I remember I looked at, okay, so every kid in town now, we're going to spend $125,000 per student currently in order to build a high school. It doesn't make sense. So nobody, I'm certainly not saying or for close down Granby High School, but we have to be realistic about how we compete, like what John said. And we have to really understand, you know, I also agree with him. When I see a number of $6,000 for choice and our per pupil is 13.4, and if that's low, I got to tell you, that's still more than double what it was, you know, 20 years ago. So we as a town spend more money. I just think that we have to look at all that and make sure we understand the numbers so that we can make the budget work, because at some point I'm not going to continue to support tax increases. You know, I mean, there's a certain amount of money that I don't want to pay beyond a certain rate on my property tax in town, and most people don't do that. So we just have to be smart about it.
I'm just going to jump in, and I don't think any one of us have asked for a tax increase at this point. And I also want to just, I'm sure, Joe, that you're not trying to imply that education should cost the same as it did 20 years ago, because as we know, a loaf of bread doesn't cost the same amount as it did 20 years ago, nor does a gallon of gas, nor does the amount that you spend for electricity or a gallon of milk. I mean, prices have gone up, right? So we cannot expect to keep funding at a rate for 20 years ago. It's more expensive to run a school. Teachers are making more money than they used to, and rightfully so. They work darn hard, and I think they need to be paid for that. And I mean, if you look at your household budget from now to 20 years ago, it's more now, because you're paying more for your utilities, you're paying more for all of these things. So if you want to compare apples to apples, we can do that, but we're not going to compare a budget to 20 years ago for what we're trying to mandate for our kids, to educate our kids now in today's day, in today's prices, and to how the world is functioning. We need more technology than we did before. That's more expensive. We're trying to get our kids and get them functional and educated for the future and the times that they live in, not the times that we grew up in.
Right, but the problem on choice is, when we started, I remember 8 or 10 years ago, and now we accept 25 students is the right size. Part of the investment was that, hey, there are small classes, and we know that when kids are young, those small class sizes for the teacher to give more individual attention are really critical. So if we sort of look at those missions, I'm not saying that, 13,400 is some great sum, but if you look at the demographics of this town that has 29 minority people out of 6,000, we don't qualify for all that extra money that a Chicopee gets, or that a Holyoke gets, or that much less a Springfield. I'm not saying we're going that. So all these other communities, because we don't have that percentage of in town that gets us to the next level to get more aid. So where do you get the money?
Well, I mean, if you look at some of the other towns,
but then you give up the class size advantage or higher taxes. Where else are we going to get the money, Jennifer?
Well, some of the other towns get money from industry and different things that they have in town. They have a higher tax base from other people besides just residences or personal homes. I mean, I'm not going to debate and have a lot of conversation about how the town is being run or anything like that. I'd like to try to bring it back to focus on the budget at hand and what we've got going on. I mean, there's certainly a need for some further discussion. We had tried that when I first came on, to have some joint committee meetings about how we can work together and how we can see the town moving forward. And we had, I think, 3 meetings, and then they stopped, and we came up with some really great ideas, none of which have been implemented. And so, I don't want to keep sitting here and spinning our wheels and talk about the what ifs and what haves. Let's bring it back to the issue at hand and the budget and the shortfalls and what we're going to do to fix the budget for the immediate future, for the immediate situation, not what we're going to do 5 years from now when we've changed this, that, or the other thing.
Okay,
Jennifer, this is Rich. This is Rich. I agree with what you're saying. There's a lot of contentious subjects, that are brought up in conversation, and simply, the way I look at it, and was circling back, is there's a $752,000 shortfall in the budget, right? And we have to figure out how to close that gap. One of the questions that was asked that I think we need to investigate and fully understand, without again going back through all the numbers, is the cost of us to school choice students in versus our out, so that we understand, is that a benefit or a loss to have more students in or out, or should it be balanced? And then once we know that, that'll tell us, what the real deficit is. If we were to say, okay, we can't stop the students who are already here, because once they're in, they can stay in, my understanding, through their schooling, but we can make a decision to not accept more, and then go through the balancing act of the classes, which I'm sure is a very difficult task. But we have a $752,000 gap to close. One of the questions asked, school choice, should we take more in or not? We should investigate that and understand it. And then we have to come back once we do that and understand, okay, now how do we balance the budget? What are our choices that we have to make in order to balance the budget without impacting the education of our students in the least impactful way?
I've got a question. It's sort of along the same lines. In the figures that Adam sent out, the revenue estimates being used for next year are $1.5 million in round numbers. And a year ago, they were just about pushing 2 million. And it would be very helpful and transparent, for that, to use a buzzword, if we could see what the sources of the revenue are, and then against that, obviously, what is being going to be utilized, as well as whatever balance may be outstanding at the end, or anticipated to be outstanding at the end of this fiscal year, which would then be available for next year.
Yeah, I have those. I can certainly share. Those numbers.
I mean, so the notes I've taken so far are, you know, Bob's point on the revenue sources and understanding those, John's point earlier tonight on the breakout of the offsets, so that we understand, you know, those rather than a total offset, what they are in their buckets relative to each of the applications across the grades, Adam. And then understanding the school choice cost benefit analysis and whether or not our out versus our in is actually hurting us or helping us. When we understand those things, you know, maybe we end up with a different number at the bottom of the budget. Instead of 752,000, maybe it's a smaller number, maybe it's a bigger number. I don't know. But once we understand that, then I think we can take the next steps in figuring out how to close the gap.
I've got one more question. That in your budget, your personnel cost is up, I don't know, a couple of $100,000. But in your explanation tonight of the COVID relief money, that's all going in as a reduction. Does that mean that the actual increase in personnel costs is something over 300,000?
No.
No, because because when you're paying it out of COVID relief, it's not showing up as part of the regular salary line.
So where are you seeing there's a $200,000 difference in our personnel?
I don't know. I don't have your spreadsheet in front of me, but the total, isn't the total I'm not near my big computer. I thought that when I did the summary of what you have, you've got a column that's can you put your spreadsheet or your presentation page back up? Okay, and I took the 8 million and 22 versus what showed on the final spreadsheet that you gave us in July a year ago, and came up with a difference of a couple of $100,000. But I don't think I brought any scratch sheets with me. Oh, yes, maybe I did. A year ago, this is what you furnished us in early July. Your personnel cost was $7,812,000, and this year it's $8,022,000. So that's where I get the couple of $100,000, 210,000 odd. And I'll also give you credit that your OTPS is down by about 60 from a year ago. Now, obviously, that's what you presented to us back then, and that's what we have to go on. That may not be the way you eventually ended up spending the personnel money. In other words, it could have been more than what you projected back in July, or less.
some of that personnel money is, you know, contractually obligated increases through the, you know, teacher scale. Some of that is actually, so if you look at it, right, there's this 8.022 for personnel. Some of that's offset over here in this column. So you're right on that. We're using some of this COVID money to offset some of the money that's in here, as well as school choice we're using in this column to offset some of those costs as well. So there's cost increase on our, you know, our contracts across the district. There's additional positions in there. I can certainly give you a detailed breakout comparing this year and last year in full detail if that's what you'd like. Again, I provided you guys with our budget for this year, but I can certainly, you know, you guys give me a list of whatever breakdowns you want, and I can certainly provide those to you.
Well, how about just the simple question? How many new people are being employed for this or anticipated for this coming year?
We don't have any. There's only one other than the permanent subs for COVID related stuff and the permanent nurse. There's only one position off the top of my head, and it's a 5th grade position at East Meadow. Depending on the class sizes, might trigger us to open a new classroom. Carol, is that right? Or is it an ABA special ed teacher that I'm thinking of? There is one new position that is not in, or was not in the budget for this year, instructional position. I believe it's ABA or 5th grade teacher. I can take a look.
It is for, so we currently have an ABA program in East Meadow that has been, basically, we've saved money by having the program in the district rather than sending these students out. If we were to send these students out to specialized programs, which was what was done previously, we would be spending anywhere from 100 to 150, depending on the child's needs. By having the program within our district, we have currently a single teacher, and that has, I believe, 9 students currently, and 9 one-to-one paraprofessionals. So the cost that we're saving by having them in district is an offset. Right now, we are at the point where this program is going to need to expand to the high school. We currently have a student that will be going into 6th grade. So this will be the last year the child will be at East Meadow. So next year, this program will move to the high school. So in an effort to have continuity from one year to the next and have staff prepared to receive these students, we were recommending hiring a teacher this year so that the teacher could work with the current teacher and be prepared to move over to the high school.
Thank you, Carol. The other thing I wanted to mention too, I've wanted to mention a couple times and I lose it, is that there is a 3rd round of stimulus that the schools will receive. You know, based on the couple of webinars I've been on with Carol, they're not really sure on projections yet or how much districts would get. They say they're going off the Title I funding formula. And if they do it based on that, my personal opinion and projection would be around $500,000 or $600,000 possibly that the district would receive for the 3rd round of stimulus, which would help us, you know, a little bit, but you know, we shouldn't be using that sum to help us offset, you know, large portions of our budget. That money is really supposed to help us, you know, kind of get ahead of this, you know, the COVID, the pandemic, get ahead of if for some reason, you know, there's a 3rd or 4th wave in the fall. So, you know, there is revenue that's not included in our budget because we don't really know what that revenue will be. that can, again, help us offset some of this deficit. But that funding, from what they're talking about, is or should be used over multiple years. And, we certainly shouldn't be using it to help us offset our 1 year deficit. So I want to put that out there, that there is some money out there. We're just not sure what that's going to be, and I wouldn't even want to include that without without knowing or having an educated projection with that.
I have a question, Adam. It's Jay.
Sure. Yeah.
On the $8 million for your personnel, and the question I'm going to ask is, I don't want a number. I just want a yes or a no, so I understand. I know you're in the middle of negotiating a budget for all the people of the school. Does your $8 million include an anticipated amount, or it does not, and whatever is negotiated will be automatically added to the deficit?
So this does, yes, it includes in a.
You don't have to tell me the number. You don't have to tell me the number.
Yep, it includes an anticipated amount. Yes.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
That's a good question. Good point.
Yep.
Just two questions. So basically, my assumption is we're 750, 800,000. Let's say we're $800,000 short. So you said under projected COVID offsets that you actually got 292,000. So that means that theoretically we've got $130,000 there to go into the kitty. Okay. Then yes, I was looking at the CARES Act and all that stuff, and I know that the town is maybe projected to get 1.8 million in total and something to the school system. And I agree, we have to find a way not to use all of that money just to offset the rest of the difference. But knowing what our situation is, I'm just going to throw out a number of $250,000, so that would still leave another $250,000 if it was 500,000 or something. So if we've got those numbers, we're now half of the way there with just those two things. So then the next question becomes, certainly from your budgeting standpoint, if the school committee got their ideal plan and added the 53 students at 6,000, you've basically solved your problem by doing a little bit of cutting. Does that make sense financially? I don't know, so I'm looking at this saying, there's a path,
So certainly numbers wise, yes, if we can incorporate some of that CARES money and the COVID money, certainly numbers wise, we could do it. The only caution that I would say in using the remaining balance that we have now, and then some or any of the third stimulus package, is that although the state has said, they're waiving the supplement, not supplant aspect of it, and we can essentially use it for anything, right? Anything to get our buildings back open, full capacity, whatever we're following. I do have to report on these numbers and how we're spending this money on a quarterly basis. And what I caution is that, we're using some of this money to offset teaching salaries that we would use, operating expenses for anyway. What are we going to do a year from now when we're right back in the same spot and we don't have COVID or ESSER or CARES Act revenue? Is my only.
Exactly right. You're kicking the can down the road, and fiscally, that's never a good choice.
Okay, so that's a bad choice. But there's one other area that we can look at, is that if our deficit is $800,000, and after we throw out the transportation article and other stuff, let's look at a $9 million, number, then is there a contingency plan that would reduce the spending on the school budget by, let's say, 5% or 7%. You know, granted, everybody level funds and everybody are, you know, there's never enough money and all that, but I'm just throwing out different options saying, so there's a little bit of extra COVID money here, and there's, you know, this over here. And so one of those things has to be, you know, certainly raising taxes could be put on the table too. You know, if somebody wants to go out and get people behind that, you know, I'm not arguing against any of that. So so you either come up with a contingency spending and so maybe you can piecemeal it together. Okay. But those are the sort of the financing options that I basically see in terms of how we would make up the difference in this budget deficit.
I mean, you know, we have, you know, our budget is essentially between 75, 80% personnel. So we don't have much wiggle room in discretionary funds where we can, you know, realize cuts that can help us, you know, actually take a chunk out of this deficit without going into the classroom. And I think we're trying to stay away from that. But if we're trying to make some real spending cuts, you know, we can do, you know, a few thousand here or there. But if we're going to make any dent in this, you know, we're going to have to go into the classroom and cut teaching positions. And you know, that's the reality of it. I know people don't like to hear that. But with such a staff heavy budget, you know, we would have no other choice other than to cut teaching positions.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying, you know, because our personnel is so high, you know, to get, you know, to make some real headway on getting that deficit down, I don't think we have a choice other than going into the classroom.
Okay. And even though this isn't on the budget, I guess, since I'm trying to get caught up, so how much are we putting a year into our deferred teacher retirement? You know, we deferred all those payments, didn't we, Chris, over the years or years ago, where there was extra money that the town was gonna have to fund into, or is that the total town retirement fund? I don't remember that. But
No, all that has already been taken care of since that reform was enacted back in '92 and '93.
Okay.
Those funds were written down over a period of time.
Okay, very good.
Adam, I have a question for you. Are
Sure.
we adding a 6th grade teacher next year?
No.
I see
No.
3 grade 6s.
You're in East Meadow, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, grade 6.
So I
Because
believe
there's 2 now, correct?
there's 2, but 3 5th grades. I forget how it is. One of our 5th grade teachers is going to 6. Carol, I don't know if you can clarify that, but it's not adding any staff.
We are.
Okay, because I see that there's 2 5th grade teachers. I didn't know if it was a typo or.
No, there are.
Okay.
The projection is currently we have 3 5th grade and 2 6th grade. 5th grade is moving up to 6th, and so is the teacher. So we will be going to 3 6th grade and 2 5th grade. So there is no addition of any teacher.
That was my question, only because the 2nd grade 6 was way, way down, so I didn't know if it was a typo or what. My next question is, how many students are in East Meadow and how many are in the high school?
I think it's like 4. Go ahead.
Currently, like compared to remote learning, or just in general enrolled in each of the schools?
In general, enrolled.
I think I don't have the numbers exactly, but I seem to remember it's like 438 in East Meadow and low 3 and change for the high school. I think our total enrollment is 712. So whatever that math works out to be.
Yeah, I was just looking at the individual building sizes. I was just running some things through my head.
I have it based on what we just did for remote, 226 in person, 97 remote. So 323 in the high school and 347 and 36, 383 in East Meadow. And that's based on current enrollment. So we have 226 in person, 97 remote in the high school, 347 in person and 36 remote in East Meadow. So that East Meadow number is higher because that's where we saw the biggest number of homeschool choices right now.
I was going to say that was quite a drop.
Yeah, I don't have what that, and there was a lot of school choice out for kids in like private, going to private Catholic schools and stuff. So I don't have what that exact number is, but I feel like it was like 438, 428, something like that in the low fours.
Right. We lost at the beginning of the year 42 students.
I'm just looking at ways that we can close this gap. At East Meadow, how many ELL students do we have?
Carol, if you're answering, you're still on mute.
It would have been nice to have some of these questions ahead of time, because I'm
trying to bring some of these up too.
No, it's okay, and I apologize. It was really just me looking at it as we were sitting here talking about things that I had a couple things pop into my head. If you don't have it right now, that's fine. It's not dire for me to know that answer right now. It was just something that was percolating.
So I have our Sims report from March up here, and I don't want to misspeak and throw a number out there because I'm not exactly sure on what would go into EL because it's a state report and obviously it's not that easy. But there is a heading at the top. It says total EL and it says 20. It says English learner populations and it says 27. I'm not sure, Carol, if that sounds accurate.
I'm trying to pull up the enrollment data right now. Can I suggest next time that we have this joint meeting that we also have Stacy attend with all of the enrollment data so that we're able to answer these questions right on the fly?
Sounds good, Carol. We'll make a note.
So the total L's that I have is 39.
Is that total district-wide?
Yes, that's total district-wide.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so I had based on our Sims report 37, so 27 at East Meadow and 10 at the high school. But again, those are, those reports are moving targets, so.
Absolutely.
Pardon my ignorance, but what is ELL?
English language learners. They're students that English is not their first language.
Okay, I just learned something. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jen, just from my understanding, what are you trying to get from that number as it relates to the budget?
No, I was actually I was just wondering how many total we had, wondering if that position needed to be a full-time position, or if it could be combined with our high school. So if we could somehow manage to have one ELL for both buildings, if there wasn't that high of a population, that was my only, if we could find some savings in those random positions.
So I have
And I don't mean that in a condescending way.
Yeah, I have a comment. Are those reimbursable expenses? Those teachers?
Which,
Is that grant related?
English
the ones that are for ELLs,
Yeah.
Yes.
we don't fund them with grants.
So we do, so in order for a district to receive Title III funding, you have to have over 100 EL students to qualify for your own grant entitlement. We work with CES in a consortium and are able to benefit from working with CES, but we only get approximately $5,000 from Title III because we only have such a small number.
Carol, this is Jill Pelletier, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the number of positions for L students would depend on their specific needs and the amount of time that they would need service. So you could have 5 students and you might need potentially 2 staff members just based on the hours required based on need.
Correct.
Not necessarily building.
Yes, correct. So based on their English language level, yes, they may require more hours of service. We currently have a full-time teacher at East Meadow, and at the high school, we have a .8 teacher who is also the EL coordinator. So part of her responsibilities are administrative, and she oversees the files and the testing, the access testing, the WIDA testing that has to be done in order for us to receive, the Title III grant funding.
Are any of the choice students ELL students also? Any choice students that come into our school system, are there any of those choice students that we need to provide ELL services for?
I would have to go back and look at that. But we currently have enough Granby students to warrant, this staffing.
No, I'm not looking at warranting that staffing. I'm just wondering, since we are relying, as I keep going back to revenues and cutting costs and stuff, to me, what's important is, and people can look at me and say that's not fair or whatever, but what's important is that if we bring in a choice student, we shouldn't really be bringing in a SPED choice student. And we should try not to bring in English as a second language student, not because those students don't deserve that, but because we are a small school system and we just can't afford to provide all the services. So I'm just wondering, is there a way to control some of the costs potentially that could impact us by looking at how, or is that something that's not legal under the choice school system?
So it is not legal. It's just as if any child who applies to a vocational school, you can have criteria of a child going to a vocational school, but you cannot ask if they're an L or if they have an IEP. The same thing is true for children who apply school choice, whether it's our child that's applying to another district. they cannot ask those questions. Once, if a district advertises that they have open seats and you get 10 students for 5 seats, you can have a lottery, but it needs to be a lottery where you're picking just based on the numbers. You cannot pick based on who the students are that are applying. And that's the same whether they go out or they come in.
Okay, well, I am curious as to how many of our choice students are sped, you know? So I would, because that's a higher cost to us. I mean,
So,
regardless of what we get from them, sped students just cost more.
so
Okay.
Joe, I think just to talk about that, when Adam went through the sped increment, I think that word increment is an important word, because based on, and Carol, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and Adam as well, but I'm just going through this in the, you know, my own job. But going through that process, you, with school choice, what a district receives is based on the level of need and level of service of that school choice student that they service. So if there are more costs associated with the services that a student receives, that's the reimbursement that that district does get.
That's
Yeah, but it's
absolutely,
not gonna
that's,
cover the bulk of the
no,
cost.
it
I mean,
will, it does, it absolutely does cover any of the additional costs.
So you're saying there's no impact with sped students on our budget because all of the additional cost of bringing that student in is borne by an offset provided by the state?
It's not an offset provided by the state. It's an offset provided by the sending district. So we fill out what, and Adam has it in his report as an offset, which is called circuit breaker. So any child who exceeds a certain amount that the state determines as a maximum, any money above that is recouped at last year, I believe it was at 75%. Any school choice child who needs additional special education services, it's billed back to the sending district.
Okay.
So what are the recommendations here in terms of next steps? And going back, looking at the sheet, it's a $727,000 gap. We had some interesting topics brought up around school choice, revenue sources, the breakout of the offsets, and the personnel cost increase year over year, which based on the 7.8 to 210 is 2.6%. Which is probably a lot tied to raises in contracts. But looking at that, what's the next steps?
Rich, sorry, are you asking us on, you know, as far as the school department or just as the group as a whole as to what the next steps are?
Well, it's twofold, right? Obviously, another joint meeting will be needed to review, you know, what options can be brought forward to close the gap. And unless I'm wrong, I don't think we can put out a budget that has a $727,000 shortfall in it. And John, tell me if I'm wrong. Did we lose John?
No, well,
There you go.
you have to have a balanced budget.
Right.
So,
So-
anything that's spent has to be approved. I mean, if for example, the town wants to have an override vote, then they can approve going to the ballot for an override vote. But you can't expect to go out of the budget meeting without a balanced budget. which means that everything that's approved for expenditures has to be matched up with revenue.
Right, so obviously we'll need another meeting, but we'll need some recommendations back from the school committee and the school and back on what can be done to close the gap. What are the options? And I think, you know, as townspeople and, you know, interested in the education of our students, we want to pick the options that are least impactful to the classroom and the education of our students. But we clearly have to close the gap.
So Rich, I guess my question to you or the finance committee would be, you know, what's our target? Like, are we going to get any help from the town in trying to solve this deficit, or is the whole $727,000 deficit the responsibility of the school department? Because again,
John, I think you'd be best to answer that.
Again, we got to emphasize it is for us to do any type of you know, cutting this deficit down, it's got to go directly to classrooms. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because our personnel, again, is 75%, almost, you know, around 80% of our total operating budget. Our discretionary, quote unquote, funds is about 2.6 million. Of that, $838,000 of that is transportation. We really have no say on that. Just under $1 million of that is special education costs. Now, some of that is, you know, our director and some district personnel, but the rest is tuitions that we pay to districts and schools for our kids that we send out. Facilities, you know, the other than the custodians, which we pay using school choice, all of that money is, you know, bare minimum to operate the schools on a yearly basis. So, you know, that 2.6 really gets down to a smaller number where we can, you know, we can make changes there and not impact the classroom. So I just, you know, I want to stress, and I know you guys understand it, but, you know, we can't make any progress without directly impacting the classroom and cutting teaching positions.
The problems that school have are very similar to the problems that town has. And we've spoken about this at meetings many times in the past years, is that all the budgets are very heavily dependent upon personnel. And that in past years when we've had to go do budget cuts, the only way you can even realistically think about major budget cuts is by decreasing the personnel or decreasing the compensation paid to personnel. So it's a yearly problem, and it's got to be considered that it's a yearly problem. And from time to time, there are ways to ameliorate a particular year's problems, but anything that in the long run is going to involve increases in compensation or increases in expenses has got to be thought of in a different way. In the long run, the only thing you can do is raise taxes. In the short run, there are other things. And I think what we have to look at is whether this is a short run question or a long run question is the first thing. It will be helpful, I think, for a little bit sharper look at revenue sources, including some of the things which are perhaps unpalatable to a lot of people. The possibility of the 55 extra students, you know, exactly what is a realistic number to expect might work, and what would that do to the budget? What are the trade-offs from that? The extra amount of money coming in for COVID relief, what might that be? How much money does the school have in its various pockets of savings accounts that they have? What's in there and what that could be used? So there are a lot of things that are still open for us to take a look at, both from the school point and the town point, before we're ready to say, all right, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. We're not really there yet, I don't think. I think there are other things to be known.
Now, I'll say this, I mean, you referred to various pockets of savings. We don't have various pockets of savings. We run our school choice budget down. You know, there's, you know, I'm in the process of projecting savings for the rest of the year, but it's not like we have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting somewhere where we can, you know, use that to help offset the budget. I would have already included that. So again, school choice and circuit breaker, we use those funds, essentially 100% of them every year, to offset the operating budget. So there's not much savings from fiscal 21 that we could, you know, use to help offset this deficit. So I want to put that out there. Go ahead, Audrey. I apologize. But again, it goes back to my original questions. And John, I understand all your points and I appreciate them. But I can do all that work, but I kind of need some guidance on what I know what you want me to do, but what are we trying to get to? Like is the town going to help out if I can get the deficit to $200,000? Like what's I think the school department and school committee should have some sense of what the willingness on the town is to help the school solve some of this deficit without us, essentially doing all the work and looking for every penny we have to try to solve this. And I don't mind doing that work, but I'd like some guidance other than going through all our revenue and going through, all of our savings and going about it that way. I'd like to have some type of target that I could get to that, the town and finance select board would then say, okay, we can help you out the rest of the way. I think that would certainly be something I'm looking for.
$750,000. No, it's a joke.
Well, this is just the first meeting and things are running late this year. The finance committee has not received anything from budgets yet. Mr. Martin is still working on that. We appreciate that. But this is our first look at the school budget. We have not yet had a chance to look at town budget. There are all these questions about sources of money. So I think that we need, from the finance committee point of view, to go back and ask ourselves what kind of additional information would we like to see. We didn't get it all at this meeting. You didn't know what all we would want. We wouldn't know what all we want until we heard what some of the questions and issues were. So it's just the beginning of the process. So I can't tell you, I can't say that the town is willing to kick in $10,000. I can't say it's willing to kick in $700,000 and where that money would come from. Can't say it could come from this source, come from that source. Can't say we should be cutting department budgets so we can funnel money over to the school. We're just not in a position to say that yet because this is the very first budget meeting that we've had.
Understood. And I need to have this budget voted on by school committee by May 1st. So I'm not sure what the timeline is, for the rest of town departments or the finance committee to see other budgets, but and I'm sure Chris is under the same exact, time crunch as I am, but this has to be, voted on by school committee by May 1st. So
Why? Excuse me, Adam, why? Does it have to be voted on by May 1st?
So we have to have a budget in place by May 1st. That's a state requirement. That's
a state requirement that you have a budget by May 1st?
Yep, state, that's a mass general law for schools that the budget has to be an adopted budget. Now it could be essentially this number right here, if barring no more meetings because of time, but according to mass general law for schools, the school department needs to have an adopted budget voted on by school committee with a public hearing with all of that by May 1st.
Thank you for the distinction. So you don't have to have a budget. You have to have the school committee vote on an approved budget.
Well, correct. Yeah, we'd have to have an adopted budget by May 1st.
You don't actually have a budget until the town authorized money to spend. That's different from saying, no, if the school department, for example, if the school department wants to vote by May 1st on exactly this budget, that's okay. School department, the school committee can do that. But then at town meeting votes how much money you'll be allocated for next year. And the town meeting says, well, we like that, plus we want another 100,000. You're surely not going to turn it down. If town meeting says, well, we like that, but you're going to have to cut $700,000 out of that, then that's what you have to do. So I'm just saying that these are semantic points, but they're important ones that you need. I understand now that you need to have the school committee vote on a budget to say you have an approved school committee budget, but that's not your budget until the town approves allocations for expenditures. The same for every department. Every department has to have their budget in. Matter of fact, every department has had to have their budget in already to Chris some time ago. In February, sometime they had to turn in their budget. Chris goes through and he makes the adjustments that he needs. Finance committee hasn't seen it yet. We'll make whatever adjustments. All those things means that there are budgets which have been approved by a whole lot of people, all except for the most important people, which are the town meeting people. Think of it as semantics, but it's real semantics.
So what, we should meet in 2 weeks and try to finish nailing this down?
So as far as us, as it goes right now, our next school committee meeting is April 20th, and the plan for the school department is to present the school committee with, as of it stands right now, this budget. So April 20th is our next scheduled school committee meeting. You know, obviously the school committee we can talk offline if we've got to put one before that. We're running up against, you know, the posting time, but as of right now, April 20th, I will be presenting this budget as it stands to our school committee.
Well, as I said, this is the first budget meeting of any kind that the finance committee has had. Everything has been late this year, like it was late last year, and we can put the blame on COVID, and the blame belongs on COVID. It's very, very difficult across the entire spectrum of the American community to get together to make decisions on that. We will schedule meetings pretty soon and think about the kinds of things we will want for additional information. And then you can get us the additional information. We'll get stuff from Chris. Then we'll get back together. I cannot promise it'll be by the 20th of April, though. I could promise it'll be by May 1st, but I can't promise it'll be by the 20th of April.
Okay.
We didn't know what we were to in this meeting, so there had no chances to have questions ahead of time. Now we've had this meeting and it's been fine. It's been a good meeting. We'll have some questions and you'll have some more questions. So think about a school committee meeting after April 20th.
So again, I based on Mass General Law, I need to have a few other things aside from school committee, like public hearings and public forums prior to that May 1st date. So I'd love to say, yeah, but you know, right now, April 20th is the date. Again, that's something the school committee is gonna have to talk about, but again, like other town departments, I understand the school is a little different than other town departments. You know, we're really backed up against dates on getting, whatever we want to call it semantic wise, an approved adopted budget, but we're up against some deadlines. So, you know, changing the date of our school committee meeting is something that the school committee will have to talk about.
Yeah, I would suggest that you do that.
So again, it goes back to the question. We're gonna move it, but I guess we'd want to know if we're gonna move the date of a school committee meeting, when the next time we could get together as a joint committee.
Adam, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you do say you do have your budget done for May 1st, can you amend that budget after May 1st before it goes to the town floor for approval?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Again, yes, I'm sure we could amend it multiple times, but just, you know, we have to have something public by May 1st per Mass General Law.
Okay, I get that.
Also, I would suggest that we think of the possibility of not necessarily having all three groups together at the same time for every meeting. It's taken, 2 months to get this one together. And you don't want to wait 2 months to try to get another one together between all three. So I think as things come up, I should be prepared to call meetings on an ad hoc basis with whichever group would like to have the meeting to discuss whatever points can be discussed. I think that's one thing maybe that everyone is going to have to be willing to think about, is that we may not be able to get all of these people together all the time to discuss the issues.
Do we have to have a quorum in these, or can we just have, I mean, I think it's important to have all three committees present because it's going to eliminate a lot of the back and forth. But do we have to have, I mean, as long as we have a quorum representative for each group, is that acceptable rather than trying to get this entire group together?
I don't even think that you need a quorum of every group.
Unless you could be voting on something, you don't need the quorum there.
Right. If decisions are not being made, then it's just a meeting of whichever groups formally have enough people to have a quorum, and everybody there is just to participate as allowed by whoever is officially having meetings. So one person, 2 people, 3 people, whatever we can get together. But I think the first thing to do is to just erase from our mind a message that every group has to have everybody representative at any meetings that we're going to have to discuss what the issues are. Again, this is no decision making for anybody that doesn't have a quorum, but we usually don't make decisions at these meetings.
Okay, so again, I just like to be real clear, and I apologize if I'm repetitive, but I know Rich said he was keeping a list, and he had some, based on our conversations, he had made a list of follow-up questions. Am I, based on John, what you had said a few minutes ago, should I assume I'm going to receive something via email from you or someone from the committee about specific things, or should I, Rich, go over that list again and I jot those things down? How would you like this information given to you?
Well, the finance committee will get together as soon as we can and have a discussion about, based on what we've heard tonight, what other kinds of things would we like to hear about, or would we like to know information. And then I think that the thing to do is that I would communicate that to everybody by email, and then we would then work on trying to get the next meeting of whoever can make it as soon as we could. Does that sound okay to all the people?
Yeah, I'm good with that, John.
John, did you say that information be sent out to everybody?
I would send out the questions that we have, and then the information would probably it may come also as an email, but then I think would be ready for a discussion at another group meeting of whoever it is that could make it into the group.
Which is fine, just to send out the questions, but people can't start emailing each other back and forth regarding the questions or trying to answer something. That breaks the open meeting law.
Yep. Okay, but I think what could happen is we could have a meeting, and then Adam individually could receive an email from John with all of the questions or things that the finance committee has discussed in our open meeting. So he could do that. He just couldn't copy everybody. But then Adam could send individually a copy to every member individually, just no string. So yes, as long as you communicate one-on-one, then you're not in violation of the open meeting law.
I can send a question. To everybody. Basically, the finance committee will be having a meeting, and it's pretty much equivalent to sending out the minutes of the meeting, saying, here's what we did. We have once decided we want to ask these questions as a follow-up to the meeting that we had. You can mail it out to anybody.
Oh, okay.
John, do you have any idea of when you guys may be able to meet? Just so I know I can start getting some. I know there's some school choice questions. I can start getting some of this information together. But are you thinking next week, 2 weeks from now? Just so I have some type of deadline or. All
right. Well, here's the thing I was thinking as posting. Tonight is Wednesday, and we need 2 days to post a new meeting. But I think the finance committee called its own meeting to order. So the finance committee is in a meeting right now, and I think that we can adjourn our meeting rather than what's the word for is it adjourn? It's not adjourn. It's
continue to a date certain.
Continue to a date certain. If everybody can make tomorrow night, for example, that we could continue our meeting to tomorrow night, and then we wouldn't. Then we're on notice at this meeting, and then it's just a continuation of this meeting. So the first question is that can the finance committee meet at 6 o'clock tomorrow night?
Yes, for me, John.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, Rich, Scott's okay. Rich?
Yeah, I'll be tight. I'm not sure, but I certainly can try.
Okay, well then we will continue this, we will continue tonight's meeting of the Finance Committee to tomorrow night at 6 o'clock on, probably on the same,
Link?
not the same link, but the same software.
Okay.
That, Chris, you'd set up a meeting for us on the time?
Yeah, I will. Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Get it out to all the members.
So we'll meet tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And if anybody else wants to attend, just to attend as a citizen, please come to the meeting, join in the meeting. And we'll try to put together a list of the kinds of questions that we'd like as some follow-up information on that. So that would be, I think, that's as early as we can start it. We're willing to try to start it as early as we can start it.
Thank you.
So what do you need? A motion to temporarily adjourn?
The motion to recess the meeting until 6 o'clock tomorrow evening.
Okay. We don't have to vote on that.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, the Finance Committee does. But are we ready to, are we ready to adjourn or recess this meeting?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
Okay.
I am.
Then I'll take a motion from the Finance Committee to recess the Finance Committee meeting till 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Any further discussion? If not, then all in favor? Aye.
I,
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you.
okay.
A motion for the school committee to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the select board is still,
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jay. Any further discussion at this time? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Have a good night, folks.
yeah, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I'd like to thank everybody for attending.
Thank you.
This conference is no longer being recorded.